before we get into the main agenda, we want to start with good news stories. So, if you've listened to the podcast, you'll know that this is how we start every single episode. And it's just like a way to start with positive vibes. Each of us will share our own good news story. Could be something personal, it could be something work related. But while we're giving our good news stories, we'd love to hear some of the good news stories from the audience. So in the comments or in the chat, drop your good news for the week, and we'll share those after we go. And Ian, we like for guests to go first. So if you have something, please go.
All right. Yeah. No, great to be doing this again. I remember the last time we chatted, it was I think it was at Transform, was it? Like two
It
years
was, yeah, it
something?
was like in the middle of the expo at
Yeah.
some like random table. We had our computer set up. It was scrappy, but it was fun.
It was scrappy. It was amazing. And it's amazing to see what you guys have been able to do with the podcast these last couple of years. And I'm really honored to be back. For good news. So yesterday, I'm gonna go personal on this one. Yesterday was actually an amazing just day at work. We had, a lot of good things going on, some things that came out of our performance cycle, a lot of alignment on where we're going, some good new business stuff. I had a great customer meeting, but the way I knew that my day was gonna go really well was like the little wins. In the morning, I have three kids, all 5 and under. And so my two daughters, aged 3 and 2, did not want to put on their shoes. It was just like it was not going to happen for them. They each wanted like the other shoes. It was like a whole crisis. And I'm like trying to get my like work day started. I work remote most days, and there's just absolute total mayhem going on downstairs. So I come down and I turned it into a little bit of a game where they could I put the shoes behind my back and they got to pick which one would
So that's
randomly.
the trick.
And that was the trick. That was the parenting win and got them off to school. And I just knew from that small win that it was going to be a good day. And it was. So that's my good news of the day.
Steven, you gonna go next?
Yeah, I'll go next. I'll go personal and I will go parenting also. I'm on the other end of the spectrum, so I have two teenage daughters. One is 15, one is 13. My oldest daughter, Astrid, she went on her first date. At least, we co-parent, so it was like the first date on my watch, and they went to an Austin FC game. That's the professional soccer team, the only professional team we have here in Austin. And I survived. Everyone survived. That's my good news. The boyfriend survived. Astrid survived. They had a great time. We met all the parents in this kind of 3 hour time frame. So yeah,
So he passed the
that
test.
he passed the test. Good kid.
Okay,
He was a good
good.
kid. Firm handshake, and he looked me in the eyes. So that's really what I was looking for.
I think I'm going to stick with the parenting theme. So, my wife and I are 11 weeks out from our first, and it's a girl. Her name is Lena, and yeah, we're in that final stretch. She just entered the third trimester like a week or two ago, and the closer we get, the more nervous I get, and the more real it becomes. And so, my good news is that she's healthy, the baby's healthy and I'm ready. I'm ready to be a dad. I feel like before I know it, I'll be, you know, coming up with games to get her to do what I want and taking her on her first date. So have a lot to look forward to.
Well, one thing you already have in luck is bad dad jokes, bad
I
humor.
do.
So that
Yeah.
is a key part of
Tori
the
likes to
job.
point that out.
Well, before we move on, I've got more good news, and this is um, not related to any of our personal lives or work lives, but we have a cool opportunity for our audience, for those of you on this webinar. You probably saw in our invites that we have 3 free Transform tickets. And I know it is a tight turnaround, but if you're not familiar with the Transform HR conference, it's an amazing conference. It's one of the two must go to conferences that Daniel and I have on our list every year, and we've got 3 free tickets. So if you're interested in one of these tickets, drop a comment of Transform into our chat, And the ChartHop team will follow up with the winners after the webinar. But do not sleep, y'all. This is an amazing opportunity. So, with that being said, so drop your comments now if you're interested. Get one of those tickets. We'll be there, and Ian, you're going to be there
It's
also, right?
I'm gonna be there. I never miss Transform. It's an awesome week. We'll
it's
have
the 16th, right? Is that the right date?
Yeah, I think it's the
So
week
it's
of
coming up.
17th of March, something like that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's definitely it's coming up. So it's a fast turnaround, but it's well worth it. I actually remember when I was first getting ChartHop off the ground, I sort of made a almost impulsive decision to go to Transform. This was like back in like 2019 or something like that. And I just like hopped on a plane to Vegas, and it was just an amazing experience seeing everybody. Great thing. So free tickets, always good. And if you go,
Let's
great
go.
luck.
Well, that I'm curious to see who's going to win those. So, why are we here? Let's start getting into the agenda for today. At the MPL, we launched the MPL Modern People Leader in December of 2020. That's the podcast that Daniel and I co-host. Ian's been on the show. We've heard a lot of things. We've had a lot of conversations with HR leaders over those years, and there's a handful of consistent themes that we've heard over that time period. And at the top of the list is HR tech isn't delivering on its promise. And the number of HR leaders that have said to us things like, we're drowning in one-off requests. Headcount planning and compensation is a nightmare. And there's just too many spreadsheets. There's too much tech and too many spreadsheets. Like, I am just shocked that in 2025, I always say that the last compensation cycle. So my background in HR is total rewards. The last comp review I was a part of was at Goldman Sachs in 2009, and I'm shocked to hear that people are still taking data dumps and extracts and cramming things together, cutting sheets. And so today we really want to dig into that. We want to dig into what is going on, in your world. And, we also want to pick apart some of the use cases that were shared. So in advance, we got a lot of information, and we're going to touch on some of that.
Yeah, and real quick, we want to hear from you. So in the chat, tell us like what are the most frustrating HR tech challenges that you're facing? Like what are some of the, really tedious reporting requests that you're getting, or just things that that you shouldn't be doing and your tech isn't doing for you? Drop it in the chat and we're gonna circle back to it later.
So, um, as the comments start rolling in, and please do drop your comments in. We've told, again, if you listen to the show, that Daniel and I go off script a lot. And while we have a general outline and agenda for today, I wouldn't be surprised if we go off script. We've told Ian we'll probably throw you some curveballs. And so, we're really curious to see what your horror stories are, because we know they're out there, y'all. This is a safe space. Don't be shy. And as before we kind of, jump into the pain, Ian, I want to bring you into the conversation. And, I know that you have strong feelings. One of the reasons why we chose you as a partner for this session were some of the things you told us in that meeting at Transform a couple years ago. I mean, you had mentioned all the time that you spent in this space. You've done a lot of cool things in addition to building and growing ChartHop. Obviously your team being part of that, but I call this the Brene Brown question. Like, give us your quick story, and how you relate to this topic. HR tech sucking, excuse my language, and some of the things, some of your lessons learned at ChartHop.
Yeah, it definitely does sometimes. My story, I've been on the intersection of tech and people my whole life. I you know, did comp sci and theater when I was younger, got into startups and started my own company geez, I guess it was 15 years ago. And that was like I gotten from managing a small team, which you learn a few things as a first time manager, to all of a sudden having to think about like the org? How are we going to grow? How are we going to structure? How are we going to scale? How are we going to, level everybody and have a way of attracting, retaining great talent and creating a good culture and like all of the things that, people leaders are really invested in. I was really doing for the first time. And through that journey, um, we would have, we got to a few hundred people, and it was just like all the planning of just figuring out how we were going to hire, like just getting basic access to, just even basic people data that I needed to plan the organization was always a process of multiple different systems, pull it into a spreadsheet, like do the whole thing. And it felt to me that if the most important thing a company is its people and its people strategy, why did the tech that supports that strategy just suck, for lack of a better word, right? Like, engineers love to build great solutions for engineering teams, and there's all kind of great engineering tech, and the revenue teams get a lot of attention. But why is it that when building a company, like as a founder, as now a CEO, like the most important thing is people issues. Why is the tech not good? And I have some like theories about that we can definitely go down. But like I really felt like if you had a system that was collaborative, that was integrated, that was something that could bring things together in a central source of truth, but played well with others, like and was a place where HR and finance and the leadership team and really every manager could learn to just be a little bit better. That would be a powerful thing. So I started ChartHop about 6 years ago now. It's been a real amazing journey and experience because part of the way we build is it's just like we ourselves encounter challenges. We are our own best users, right? Like we just came off a performance cycle and there was a new calibration feature that we used in our own performance cycle. Just really, really trying to understand at a deep level just the problems and challenges that HR leaders are having and all of our different customers. So that's my story. We really try to build the best software around, but that doesn't mean that we're going to cover every need for everybody, and that's why I think integrations are really important. And it's in this space for some reason, a lot of companies don't play well with others. I sort of take a different perspective on that, but uh, but that's ChartHop in a nutshell. It's one people ops place for HRAS, performance, engagement, comp, and headcount. So that's us. Um, so a lot of jumping off points there. I don't know, where should we
Yeah,
start?
yeah. No, well, I mean, I maybe a good place to start is, there's some fire in the comment section in the chat right now. I'm just looking at some of the things, reporting, complexity of integrations. Oh my God, why doesn't it all talk to each other? Why is this so difficult? Like that's one that I definitely relate to. Data in disparate systems, customized reporting. I see a lot of reporting here. Being able to aggregate data from multiple sources, again, siloed tools. So there's any of this surprise you? I mean, this is all seems pretty. I have my own horror stories related to some of these.
Yeah, I remember them myself as well. Like I think we all deal with all of these, and I do hear it a lot from our customers as well. A big function of, I mean, I think any good software product, but especially like HR tech, is a communication function, right? It's like part of how are you going to communicate to the company like what is and what should be. And when you actually don't have literally the underlying systems talking to each other, it's hard.
It,
Um,
quick question for you, Ian. Like, one of the hard truths and on this topic, and I think it's worth talking about, is, the pressures we're under, right? HR teams are, are shrinking. And I think that that's a trend that is probably going to continue. CFOs, it just seems have been on a rampage, and in the cost savings mode, it seems like we're stabilizing from that cost savings mode, but it still feels like any little thing that HR is looking at is being scrutinized like never before. And so, like, how do we get here? I'm just curious, like, because I'm sure this is a conversation that you guys have had a lot with your clients, just dealing with their own pressures internally.
Yeah, I mean, I think like often software goes in cycles. There's cycles of, best in breed and a lot of point solutions, and there's cycles of consolidation. And I think those are driven by economic cycles. And like we're in a consolidation moment, like no doubt, because there was a period of time when a lot of teams were growing really fast, and there was with COVID, I mean, COVID really kicked a lot of this off, right? And then I think there's been a shift. People are being asked to do more with less. There was a little bit of system fatigue where we talk to customers that like have 15 different, people systems that are all trying to talk to each other. And the only way to interface them all is a bunch of spreadsheets. It just doesn't make sense. So there's a little bit of like the fatigue at the same time that there's a company mandate to get much more operationally efficient, like reduce headcount. And, you know, unfortunately, like often like the people function is looked at as this sort of back office function, which I don't believe it to be. I believe it's a strategic function and core to the success of the business. But if there's a perception that, hey, like everybody has to cut heads, everybody has to cut software, there's going to be a pressure to consolidate. And that's what we've really seen. Like HR tech has definitely certainly seen that the last few years. So we're all kind of facing it and figuring out like how do we operate a little bit better. Um, but I think it ultimately is healthy if it leads to being a little bit more thoughtful about the like strategic role of HR tech, and
Right.
just the kind of the operational role.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and we can spend 30 minutes on that alone, but I'm going to shift gears because we do have like Ian is a legend in our space, and you really have done some extraordinary things for HR tech, and so one quick question like AI, this is another buzzy thing that has been talked about for the last couple of years since GPT dropped, and it's super confusing for HR leaders out there. So seeing your vantage point,
Yeah.
also being, understanding of the HR leader mindset and the challenges that we have, like how do I know what's real? Like if you were in our shoes, what would be some of the questions you would be asking when it comes to AI, when it comes to how that AI even factors into my tech stack? Does it even factor into my tech stack right now?
Yeah, I mean, first, like there's so much AI hype out there, and I think it's very easy to like look at that level of hype and say like this is, there's just like a lot of BS and a lot of people applying AI to a problem that maybe didn't need AI, or maybe wasn't even a problem. So there's a lot of technology looking for solutions, but in spite of the hype, there is actually something very real that is happening with this shift to AI. The capabilities that it unlocks, especially to make sense of unstructured data. And a lot of what we do as people leaders is we've got unstructured data that we're trying to sort of make sense of. And so what we've used as our lens is for the AI products that we've built is what is actually practically useful to us in our day-to-day lives? Like, what are the things that actually make things easier for us, make it easier to get answers, like speed up or time save? a process that we had and what lets us like get insights. So like there was a tweet I saw which was like one of my engineers posted it actually, which was like I want AI to do my to do my dishes and laundry so that I can write poetry and novels. And it seems like we're getting AI that writes the poetry and novels so that we can do the dishes. And like I think that the way we think about it at least is can we have AI features that help you do the dishes so you can write more
Mhm.
poetry? I think like there's a lot of hype. Just look at really like what is the time savings, what's the value, and what will this feature actually accomplish for me?
So I want to call out some of the comments that I'm seeing in here. So there's a bit of a back and forth between Jamie and David. Jamie said, I also think there is such a big market that more and more companies are springing up in HR tech. We're always attracted to the shiny new thing and are constantly being pitched things. And David agreed, with so many tools that are being added every day, it just makes it hard to integrate with everything. And you can't expect an HR person to be able to do an API integration. What's your reaction to some of these comments?
100%. I mean, first, like, you know, there's just a lot of proliferation and you want to like be just thoughtful about what are the few tools that are going to really help you. I do think looking at the integration story should be a core criteria, especially in any like central system you look at. We like there are some providers in our space that will actually charge like significant amounts of money to like talk to the API and get access to your own data, which I think is completely messed up. And is something that I just like it's philosophically like it's your data. You need to be able to access it. But I also think like you know to that point, like open API is nothing on its own, right? You need actually like practical ways of getting data in and out of a system that are gonna actually work for you. So I just philosophically believe in openness, but I think that that's something that like in that vendor selection, as you think about somebody to grow with you, like making sure, can you get data in? Can you get data out? Like, does the vendor think it's your data or theirs, right?
All good points. Well, we got to keep this moving. Daniel and I, we have to avoid the trap of turning this into a podcast because, well, in a sense it is, but we have a lot of things that we want to dig into. So I'm going to keep us moving, and this is the part of our conversation where we start to put you on the spot, Ian. Daniel and I mentioned earlier, we love to go off script. We love to throw our guests curveballs. And so we do want to talk about problems. We do want to hear, address as many of the horror stories that our audience are sharing, but we want to mix it up. And so we want to do like a real time demo challenge of sorts. And we're calling it, we branded it for today's episode, the Chart Hop Challenge. And so are you ready for this? Are you really signing up for this?
I'm ready. Let's do it. I don't know if it's gonna be the Pepsi challenge or what it's gonna be, but let's go for it.
Let's go. All right, Daniel, kick us off.
Yeah, so let me see. Uh First challenge, voluntary versus involuntary turnover. And I'll actually read out the submission that we got leading up to the webinar. They said calculating voluntary and involuntary turnover manually to give two views, one that includes layoffs and one that doesn't. HRIS out of the box reports still don't handle this well, so spreadsheets it is. All right, Ian, what do you got for us?
All right. So yeah, all right. So we've got voluntary, involuntary, regrettable, non-regrettable, and you can throw in layoff. So let me pull up ChartHop and let me take a stab at this one. Ready? I'm gonna screen share.
Drum roll. This is when we need like audio recordings,
All right, here
Daniel.
we go. Here we go. So here is here's ChartHop. For anybody who hasn't seen it, this is sort of, you got homepage, all org view. You can jump into profiles. You can actually time travel around, all that stuff. But we want to talk about reporting and turnover. So let me look at, I actually got an attrition report in this. Let's look at this one. So here we're going to have attrition over a period of time. This is a built-in like installed, but you can totally customize these any way you want. So yes, you can see like out of the box, obviously, voluntary versus involuntary is really easy to see. But if we wanted to filter this for layoff reason, I think we got reasons down here somewhere in this. Here we go, departure by reason. All right, so this fake data doesn't have any layoffs. This company is, I guess, one of the few of the last few years that doesn't have any layoffs in it. But but if we wanted to, I could basically like clone this chart and make a version of a version of the voluntary involuntary that filters out layoffs entirely. So I could do reason, departure reason, layoff. And so we're going to get nothing because this one has nothing. But that's an idea of how you could do it in ChartHop. Obviously, we try to make the system as flexible as it can as can be, and obviously we have a team that can help you with all the configuration. But that's the ChartHop challenge for voluntary involuntary. Try to make that as easy as possible to pull up.
One word I heard you use is flexible, and I think this sort of addresses one of the comments that I see in here. So Nicole said, "Does the vendor understand that though they may be the leaders in the space, different orgs may want to use their data in different ways, or do they want to trap you into following what they tout as best practice?"
Oh my God, that's a good one.
Oh yeah, that is so it's actually something that I love about building software in this space, having, like run a couple companies and seen different, different challenges and now working with hundreds of different customers and seeing all the different ways they all work. Um, I guess the way I think of maybe the ongoing chart hop challenge is can we be as configurable and flexible as possible to all the different needs and use cases people have? The kind of customizability. I think that my theory is what happens on like some people build HR tech and they start with like a particular premise. Maybe it's maybe it's performance reviews or engagement or payroll or something. And that initial premise starts to shape the design of the software in some really deep ways. So we just try to make things because I started with the premise of like, I want the strategic people platform that I wish I had had. You actually have to make it as just configurable and flexible as possible. So we have our best practices. We have things that, you can install that are out of the box and all of that. But we try to take the position that you are the ones who know your organization's needs, culture, and, business metrics better than we do, and we want to make the software as flexible as possible for that. So my hot take is basically that vendors will sometimes say something is a best practice just because it is the way it works in their software rather than it actually being an industry best practice.
One quick question I have is integrations. Why are they so hard? I want to dig into some of the comments that were shared in the horror stories from our the attendees right now. Excuse me, I was fumbling my words there. And so, with integrations came up a few different times, and I know that we work with a lot of startups, and today it's a lot easier to connect technology than it used to be in the past. And so, is the difficulty with integrations about, the vendor's tech stack and where they, how modern their tech stack is. Why are there so many challenges with integrations when, there's aggregator services out there for your tech? And I know this is more of a techie part, but integrations popped up in the comments at least 3 or 4 times. And so I was, seeing as we have an expert here, I was curious, what you could share with us there. And I'm curious, like, what does ChartHop do when it comes to integrations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first, historically, I think that this was a space because of the sensitivity and confidentiality of like, HR processes, right? Like we are dealing with people's, most personal data, things that, are highly sensitive. And, in HR, we have to be, as practitioners, like a high level of sensitivity and confidentiality. I think historically that made vendors reluctant to like open up their data too much, just like philosophically. And so as a result, a ton of vendors, especially those that were built, say, anytime before the last few years, just don't have good like APIs, period, and don't have good ways of integrating data. So that's like one challenge that's been, I think, the case in this space for a little while is just vendors not thinking integration first. And then a lot of vendors tried to monetize it as well, as I mentioned, right? Um, but I think also you have, because of what I mentioned, that like every organization is different. Every organization has different ways of thinking about like what is the way we structure, like what about matrix teams versus departments versus like every org has a different way of thinking about things, that mapping those different, you know, approaches, preferences between software is just hard. It's a tricky problem. Our engineers have a lot of fun solving it sometimes, but it is hard. And so the way we've taken the approach is, start with the open API, right? Like, we'll never charge for the use of our API. Everything that you can do in ChartHop is actually on top of that API. So everything we build automatically has connectivity kind of built into it. We then built dozens of integrations ourselves for just the most key common software that we saw a lot of, right? So like our two-way integration to ADP, that's built in-house, right? We have so many ADP customers, we want to make sure that that works like really, really well. We also wanted to make sure that we cover, any payroll system that, there are hundreds in the world, right? We want to make sure we cover everything. So we use one of the third-party integrators to cover that long tail. And then just thinking about things like, hey, can we take in, business data, or what if somebody has some random, spreadsheet that contains some piece of data that they want to just get into ChartHop on a regular basis, making sure it's really easy to import data, making sure you can set up something like a Google Sheet that automatically syncs into ChartHop or an SFTP, like just the general philosophy I had, at least in building this at the beginning, that we've continued is like make it easy for your data to have control over your data coming in, your data coming out. And we're going to try to play really well with everybody, even people that we think are, our competitors. Like I don't care. I'll integrate with any competitor because I feel that makes a stronger ecosystem. And ultimately it's what's right for the customer in the end. So that's integrations. It's a fun problem for sure. I will I will definitely not say I haven't pulled out what remains of my hair sometimes of like looking at some vendor's API and how it's set up, but it's a fun problem to try to really connect this space.
And so, Ian, just going back to horror stories, I imagine that you maybe have your own horror stories as a leader, uh, tech horror stories. I'm just curious, like, what is there one that comes to mind? And if so, was that like in the back of your head when you were building out a feature for that?
Oh man, there are just so many. I think that I've definitely seen and lived the experience of the like spreadsheet that got shared around the company that wasn't supposed to get shared around the company. Yeah, I've seen that happen at previous companies and the level of chaos that can happen as a result. And so just building into ChartHop the like level of can we make sure it's super safe? Like if you share data, even when you talk to our AI, like it's going to filter using a tech we call access guard. It's going to filter to exactly what you have access to see. Um, so yeah, that was definitely a formative experience of my last company, just building through different HR stacks, always being frustrated. You always wind up resorting to the spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheets become a problem.
I'm looking at another comment here. Amy Taylor says ChartHop is a perfect complement to my HRIS at an org of 900 employees. You know, one of the horror stories is or pain points is no source of truth or something, you know, something to the effect of there's really no great source of truth for the data. And so I'm curious like that, you know, reflecting on, you know, Amy's comment, um, like how does that, you know, what are some of the things that you do to make sure that there is a system of record and we're maintaining that, but yet we're you also one of the issues that I've seen a lot of vendors struggle with is, you know, not you it you're sold on there being, you know, seamless integration and data movement between your systems. You invest a lot of time and energy, and maybe you have an HRS because you have to use that HRIS, and so you have like one or two bolt-ons, maybe that are helping more with compensation and headcount, like performance, whatever it may be. But then you invest a lot of time and energy in this bolt-on platform, and the systems just don't talk. You know, I'm not really referring to the integration side of things that we just talked about, but you know, when it comes to a source of truth, you know, what are how can HR leaders better manage this? Like, you know, or at least what is was CharHop do to help kind of facilitate like better management of this data so that you can have two systems that coexist?
Yeah, I mean, this is why I started and set out, like, even at the beginning when we didn't have HRES, like, can we make sure ChartHop is a good place to bring source of truth together, right? So if you've got, you got one payroll system you're using for your US workers, and you've got a different one for international, and you've got some contractors like sitting on a spreadsheet somewhere, like, can we just bring all that together in one place? And so part of the part of the tech was like from the get-go have sort of a change log that like brings in data from different systems and helps you sort of make sense of it. I also think that it's important when you're going to have something that is going to be that source of truth, it has to be something that employees actually want to use. A lot of, a lot of historical HR software that is not delightful to use. It's not fast. It doesn't provide always the answers that people are looking for. So even for folks who already have maybe their data stored in some different, HRISs or whatnot, we want to be the place that can really be that employee facing experience and layer. And we try to just make that part of it just as easy to navigate and fun. And internally, we look at our DAU and MAU as like as important to our success as our other metrics. Um, so, I just think a source of truth has to make sense of the data and has to be something that the whole org can use from a practical um and just like user delight standpoint.
We need to get to chart hop challenge number two.
Well,
Yeah.
And but
Stephen,
before
real
we do
quick,
that, yeah,
we should
go ahead.
I saw an amazing comment come in from David. He said, would be curious on how Ian thinks about linking HR data to business data and overlaying the two to see any patterns or correlations. Does ChartHop do this? HR leaders are more often than ever before being asked to come prepared to speak the language of the business. So being able to link things like performance, engagement, etc. to ARR, CAC, etc. is becoming more important.
Yes, that is like a huge area for us. Oh, this fake org doesn't have real sales data in it. Um, if I go into my chart hop, which unfortunately this being a public podcast, I can't do, but I can pull up any sales rep, what's in their pipeline, like what is their quota attainment for the last 4 quarters, and that's going to come straight out of our Salesforce integration, right? I can pull up, any engineer or product manager and like what features are they working on. Bringing all that together and bringing top level financial metrics as well. So like looking at like ARR to ratios to maybe the customer success team, like all that type of stuff, is really, really powerful to bring together. And that to me as like CEO of a company is part of the real power of bringing business data together with people data. Being able to say like in a performance calibration, like, hey, like let's look at some objective numbers that we're going to tie and like are our ratings being fair and tied back to the business outcomes. So yes, that's both a both an area that we do and an area that we're going to actually see a lot more of this year because one of the most exciting AI applications for us has actually been to like sort of make sense of this data together, like to jump from a sales dashboard, which like has maybe our pipeline and deals coming up, and to jump from there to the sales reps like performance and one-on-one notes and bring all that together into um, a real sense of like how deals are progressing is extremely valuable for me as a leader of a company and really like brings together and aligns our people and revenue teams in a really strong way.
Oh my God, as a former CEO and operator, like to have that would have been golden. I know, their HR people were asked for these kinds of one-off reports and these one-off views all the time. Like it feels like a daily exercise. And so um I before we go into the final chart hop challenge, if any of these challenges sound familiar to y'all, drop a capital yes into the comments. I think we've addressed most of the pain points and horror stories that were mentioned in the comments. But if you guys are really feeling some of the things that we're sharing, please comment yes. And now it's time for Chart Hop Challenge 2. So the second challenge is reviewing data from performance reviews. Oh my God. We got a lot of submissions, leading up to this event, when we asked like what are your horror stories? We got a lot of submissions on easily visualizing and grouping performance review data in a meaningful way. If you've ever been a manager or managed a team, like this is a huge pain that definitely have felt. And so that there's your challenge, Ian. What do you have for us on this one?
All right, bringing together performance data. That is obviously ChartHop is its own performance module, which I think is actually really, really amazing and configurable and can do all kinds of things that you would want to do with performance. We also can bring in data that you can import from a different performance system. I think we're great at bringing it all together. So like, here I have, let's see, we got a performance review here. Let's see, this one I think is got data in it. Let's look at this one. All right, great, perfect. So here's a performance review. You can see, this is going to be a roll up of some of the feedback. If I want to sort of look at, this all on more of a like sheet-like view, right? Maybe I want to filter this down. I just want to look at maybe my customer group. And I can even do like calibrations, right? So like, let me bring in like
Mm.
customer group. surface any kind of fields that I want. Maybe I want to look at something like, last promotion date, maybe, or something as I'm looking at these. Um, and this was an example of, I think, an AI feature that I think is kind of a a dishes type of feature is like when it's setting up a performance calibration, like look at together like what is all the, what are some insights or some things that might be good topics to discuss. So you don't want like the AI making decisions. You want the AI pointing out patterns that are things that might be good discussion topics for calibration, right? So like here we have like, a person who is rated as meets expectation, yet the manager is saying they're ready to be promoted in 3 to 6 months. Like it's a discussion topic, right? Like it's something that might be worth like discussing, right? The support engineers are struggling. Like what skills might we need to add to that group? And so again, like just like so sifting through all this sort of unstructured data and helping uh, both the business leaders recognize patterns. I'll also say from like personal experience, there is something a little bit about you always want to come to business leaders with data, I think. And there's a little bit of a like almost an outside like, hey, just looking objectively at the data like this, can we talk about this? So it can help kind of arm the discussion a little bit. Um, and obviously, being able to like quickly sift these into kind of metrics and anything I want to break. Maybe I want to break this out by department. Interesting that the executive team is getting slightly higher ratings than everybody else. That's interesting. Like any kind of data we want to make just really easy to bring together. And of course, applying this and bringing this into a comp review is super easy. So yeah, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of performance and what that can look like.
Amazing. I love what I see here and like the in particular just the aggregation of all the information and having, as a manager having the ability to start from something and kind of the intelligence is huge. So well we are heading into the tail end of our conversation, but we want to give those of you that joined the opportunity to learn more about ChartHop. Our colleague Sophia, I just saw it go out, just sent a quick poll. And if you're interested in learning, there's a lot more ChartHop magic that we are not going into. And at the Modern People Leader, we don't partner with just anyone. And what really has stuck out to us about ChartHop, the more that we've learned about the platform, the company, the culture, is that is this notion of providing tools for the HR builder. And to me, that is like the Modern People Leader is building things and needs these dynamic tools. And so if you want to learn more, please, respond to the quick poll. Um, I think we've covered all of the pain points, Daniel. Is there anything else? I know you've also been keeping an eye as people are responding to the poll. Is there anything else we want to cover before we go into our final kind of Q&A?
No, I was going to say I think we should move to Q&A. So
All right.
if anybody in the audience has any questions for Ian or questions for us, drop it in the comments. And we have about 8, 9 more minutes, and I think we can keep going with Q&A for about 6, 7. So if you have any questions, drop it in the chat.
And while we're waiting, on the one of the things that we didn't talk a lot about is planning, scenario planning. It seems like anytime that there's a scenario plan that a CEO is looking for, um, that means a new custom spreadsheet the HR leader has to build. Not everyone can have access to this information, so we're having to create a version of this spreadsheet for ELT, a version for, the senior leadership team. We're getting feedback on these scenarios. And, if your CEOs are anything like what I was like, you know, they're asking for a lot of information and they just want to kind of test and see, what the data says. That seems to be a pain point that I talk a lot about with HR leaders. And, what are some of the tools that you have at ChartHop just in terms of like scenario planning and how, can do you guys help make that process easier? What does
Yeah,
that look like?
we do. And actually, this was one of the first product lines we launched because it was like I always felt that when headcount planning is sort of dominated by the sort of CFO or financial element, like that's only half of the picture, right? Like financial constraints and budgets and ARR outcomes those are all like parameters of what you're working with, but like when you're thinking about organizational design, you're thinking about the people in the roles, you're thinking about the skills in the jobs that you need. You're thinking about like structures that make sense for the org. And when I would do planning back at my last company, like it felt like doing it on a spreadsheet was actually it was antithetical to actually what we were doing. You wind up like getting up on the whiteboard and you would like sketch out the new org chart. Like that's how we like think about things is visually, not as a not as a set of numbers. The numbers are the constraints. So basically, we started basically very early on do a sort of scenario planning capability, right? So I say, Ian's proposed plan. And when I start up a scenario, I'm just like working in a sandbox here. And so, maybe I think that like, Setsuko is going to report in here and we're going to like make some structural changes and I'm going to drag and drop things around. Or maybe I'm going to like, I need another role here. Maybe this is going to be like East or something. So we're going to add this and a couple people are going to report in. So you can kind of like just propose these changes and and see live like what the cost impact looks like.
Oh
And
my
then like
God.
look at this together, right? Like I could share this around in just kind of a collaborative way, like a Google Doc, except it's going to be completely secure. People are only going to see what they're supposed to be able to see as far as comp and things like that. Um, and then, I could submit this for approval, like roll this up the approval chain, set up whatever kind of rules. And then these changes, they can be bottom up and rolled together to do like, a sort of bottoms up process that might be annual or quarterly. You can also, do just tactical little adjustments and move into more of a continuous mode with planning. Because one of the hassles is like, headcount planning, it just always feels like such a heavy process because you have to get all the data out and like figure out where does everybody, sit on the spreadsheet, and then like one person leaves and all of a sudden your whole spreadsheet is like out of date. So
Sounds familiar.
right.
Yeah.
So we
And
just try to make that as easy as possible, basically.
I
love
love
it.
that.
Well,
And no, I
go
was
ahead,
going to say
Daniel.
we have a couple of questions in the chat. One of them is from Eve. Does ChartHop offer a way to automate custom onboarding emails with signable forms slash docs based on role type, role level, so SLT, manager, IC, etc.?
Totally. Yeah. This was a thing that like um sort of basic to what I set up at the beginning for this product, and what we've continued is like anything is configurable and anything is like filterable, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to have a rule that says, like only managers are going to receive this particular onboarding packet, like let me see if I've got an example that could actually illustrate that here. Like here's an onboarding checklist, right? And so like this is like sending a task for a 30, 60, 90 and reading through the handbook and all this stuff. Send it to the manager, but you can filter this so you could have an onboarding checklist which only runs for, people managers, right? Or maybe there's a different one that only runs for managers of managers who are in the who are in the engineering department. So you can kind of set up these flows, and it's going to be super flexible. And then, when somebody is sort of welcomed, they can, they're going to get their agreements to sign. That's all going to be, that sort
Oh
of
my God.
onboarding process all kind of managed inside of ChartHop. We're going to have the signed document sort of sit in people's profiles again with all the sharing that there's supposed to be, and bring this all in one place. It's also great, I would say, for compliance as well, because I can actually visualize on the org chart like who hasn't signed their PIA document, which is really helpful when you get to like SOC 2s and stuff. So yeah, a lot of pieces there that we try to automate the onboarding process as well as offboarding as much as possible.
I love the
Well,
the
we were gonna,
yes, yes, yes from Eve in the comments.
yeah, and I was gonna say we were looking for one question to throw you a demo curveball, and you just did it. Anyway, Ian, we didn't even have to issue the side challenge. So I think, unfortunately, I feel like we could keep going, but unfortunately, we're at that point in the conversation where we have to bring it to a close. Um, as we do with every NPL conversation that we have, we like to wrap things up with one word or phrase close, so a word or few. Just as we reflect on the last hour and all the info that you've shared with us, how we want to wrap this thing up. So we again, Ian, we prefer for our and for those of you on the call, like drop in your one word close in the chat. But Ian, we prefer for our guests to go first. So
I got to go with transform your processes, and hopefully I'll see some people at Transform. I am there, so like if say hello, I would say to anybody here.
I can go next. I'm gonna go with the phrase. I'm gonna say this stuff doesn't need to be so painful.
it doesn't need why y'all why and I love this. I'm gonna go with build because I one of the things that Ian you shared with us early in our conversations is that like ChartHop is for the builders, and I didn't totally get that, and I totally get it. And so HR, folks, you should be building, and now we know where you can do that. So thanks so much. Huge thanks to Ian, you, the Chart Hop team, Sophia, Alex, everyone that joined and was part of making this possible. We'll send out a recording soon, and we'll see you next time. Hopefully it transformed because Daniel and I will be there also. So thanks to everyone. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you all. This was great. Thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.